Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Clucci, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go.
Oh. Okay. All right. You're good? Okay. Yes. All right. So we are going to go. Oh, I got to set a timer to give me a hot second because otherwise I talk and I forget and I don't watch the time. Okay. There we go. Okay. All right. So we are going to go in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, guys. Today I am joined by you guys. This episode is just going to be fucking wild. I'm so excited about this. I am joined by Jolene Gough. Jolene has been a chiropractor for almost 20 years, and we have been friends for almost that whole entire time, although we did lose touch. But we used to lifeguard together way back in the day when Millennium Place in Sherwood Park opened up. We were on the lifeguarding team there together. And she just told me, which I feel really bad that I did not remember, but apparently we did karate together when we were little. And so I feel like a dickhead because I didn't remember that at all, but she remembers. But I'm super excited. We ran into each other at a restaurant a couple months ago, kind of caught up and then started chatting. And I was like, we need to go on the podcast together. We need to talk about all this amazing work that you're doing. So Jolene is versed in functional neurology. She's had a whole bunch of shit happen in her life that's guided her to kind of where she's at now. Also working through some somatic body work. We're going to break down a lot of what we think is affecting our first responders today related to our bodies. So welcome, Jolene. How are you today?
I'm great, Nikki. Thanks for having me.
So excited. I know. I was so excited. I'm tingly about this episode because I think we're going to really delve into a lot of things. Like you and I had just had a chat like a couple weeks ago, just catching up again. And all the things that you were saying and we were talking about, I left the phone call and I was like, holy fuck, like this and this and this and this and this. And like, how does she know this? And she's not even you're not even in the field. You've never worked in first response. I mean, you obviously probably treat some first responders, but you've never been in the shit with us, but you know all of this stuff. And it's just like amazing to me. So break it down for me. Because again, we kind of parted ways after we both left the pool and I knew you were going to school for chiropractic, but like, how did you kind of get into this and working with the body and how's that kind of like led you through to where you're at now?
Yeah, I was always kind of drawn to people and helping people like that kind of, I mean, that's a whole different story and woundology we can dive into too. I'll leave that hanging there. But I always wanted to be with people and help. And like being like medical doctor didn't land completely right in me. And so I started working at a chiropractic clinic. I thought, this is pretty great. Like people walk in and they feel really crappy and they're hurting and they walk out feeling really good. And then I worked with a couple of great chiropractors and they were mentors for me and they kind of started guiding me into it. And I thought, why the heck not? Like, why not? And so when I got back, I was an associate for them and I kind of very really learned and very quickly that the body isn't just physical pain. We store emotions. But the journey has been till now is that it's actually, for me, 100% emotional. And the body is just giving me a story. And then I get to help the person unpack the story. And it's brilliant. And I feel very, like I hold such reverence for the human body. And I feel very honored when people see me because it's a lot of trust that you get from a person when you get to be there with them. So yeah, the somatics and there's that is around a lot now. And it's truly like, so what does it mean? Right. And I think like it means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. But so though I've never been a first responder and do work with with them a lot, or I've never been that, but work with them a lot. Like the body just holds truth, and it holds stories. And so what you tap into is the human, and then you end up working, and then you see, like you can see, and I think we get to just help each other see each other's stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the offering. What would you like to do with this? And for me, when I get to see a body and what it's presenting to me, then we get to really dive into like where the body holds it. It is a big deal too. Like based on, you can work with chakra systems, you can work with TCM, like traditional Chinese medicine, you can work with meridians with TCM, like, but where it's holding it helps us pull kind of the stories out, but then we kind of work with it. So I've just been fascinated. Like the human body is this massive canvas. It's a piece of art and a puzzle all at once. So just now it becomes so, to me, like exploratory and I'll say fun, because I mean it's a lot for people to unpack, because the word trauma is used a lot, and it can be a lot to unpack, but it can also be this like curious thing that we get to do. And that's kind of my hope, that I help people be curious with it and help hold them so they can help hold themselves through it. Because ultimately you only heal yourself, but who gets to help you in it? I don't know, this is a lot, but yeah, you can come in for your left hip and I can happily help you with your left hip. But I really don't want to see you again for your left hip. Like I do, but I want to help you work through that. And then maybe it works through something else. And I mean, that's for me now, that's what kind of fires me up. And I feel like there's a lot of richness just to tap into the body, but then to bring that awareness to it, but then just like of just a lighter sense of life. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, like I find the human body fascinating as well. Like going through my yoga teaching, anatomy, like on my fitness training, anatomy has always been something that I am just like, this is so, like our bodies are so unbelievable. Like if you think about like all of the things that are just happening for us just to sit here in our bodies, like our brains are ticking, we're breathing, like without even us like cognitively like thinking about it, like shit is happening in our bodies. We're digesting food, we're, like blood is pumping, like there's so many cool things that are going on in our body. And I think that big, like we have drifted. And again, our listeners, we might get a little foo-foo here. We might get a little ooh, airy fairy. And you might be like, Nikki, this is not, I tuned in for random fucking stories about weird people and blood and gore. But guys, we're gonna delve in here and stay with me, because I promise you're gonna fucking learn something. I think we've drifted away from that connection to our bodies. Like, I mean, again, in yoga, I try to bring back all the time. We're so busy all the time, every day. Everybody's fucking busy. We're juggling way more than we've ever had to juggle in like the history of man. We're constantly assaulted by messages, people needing us, something, you need to check this. There's a text, there's an email, there's a phone call, there's an Instagram notification, there's a blah, 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 where you're constantly pulled in all those different directions that you're never able to actually fully sit in your body and process what's going on around you. For me, I'm finding this at, like when I'm eating now, because I am driving my fucking children everywhere. I'm driving myself everywhere. I'm eating in my car like all of the time. So I'm trying to bring healthy shit that I can eat and not eat drive through, but really half the time I'm like, whatever the fuck I can grab that I can eat with one hand and still drive. And as I'm driving and eating, I am not experiencing either of those things. I am not fully focused on driving and I'm not fully focused on eating. I'm just ramming food in my face without actually tasting it, without actually experiencing, the feeling of the food going into my body. And then I get to where I'm going and I don't even remember that I actually ate on the way, because I didn't actually pay attention whatsoever to that. And I think we start to do that with our bodies. We start to go, oh, that happened, but that was yesterday. And I'm already on, especially as first responders. And we kind of talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I'm already on to the next fucking emergency. Like I have not had I didn't even register that event happened personally in my mind. However, my body definitely registered that event happened. Maybe it was something, maybe it was a fight, maybe it was something that was a little bit scary, maybe it was something that was a little bit traumatic. My body registered it. I kind of just glossed over it, went, okay, we got to go to the next thing. We got to hit the next emergency or the next paperwork or the next thing. And so our bodies are storing that stuff and we're not realizing that our bodies are storing that stuff. Same as me ramming food into my face. My body is storing the food, but it's not recognizing that I actually ate the food. I didn't get to enjoy that meal. There was no presence in doing that stuff. So are you finding, because like you coming to the body or the body's coming to you, I guess, are you finding this is what's going on with like the general population as well?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Blue Line Fitness Testing is a premier law enforcement fitness testing and training center based in Edmonton. Specializing in helping individuals prepare for the physical demands of a career in law enforcement, we offer comprehensive fitness evaluations, specialized training programs, and classes tailored to meet the unique needs of our clients. Our facility hosts a range of classes and are committed to fostering a supportive and empowering environment where clients can achieve their fitness goals. Our team includes experienced trainers who bring specialized expertise in law enforcement, self-defense, personal training, and rehabilitation. We engage through our community through challenges, events, and our podcast, and we are dedicated to helping individuals succeed in their fitness journeys and career aspirations in law enforcement. Are you looking to get started with your career? Come see Blue Line Fitness Testing, and we'll get you there.
Yeah, definitely. And it's in different ways, but it's the same but different, right? So at any moment, we're just not connected. And when you're eating and you're putting food in your mouth, but you're not thanking the food, it's an energy and your body gets it. So the thing is, like you said, like subconsciously, our body registers everything we're actually thinking and actually putting into our brain and our subconscious, and it lands in the body. We can pretend all we want logically, and we can tell ourselves we're thinking, oh, I'm doing this and this is great, but everything, like I think it's Basil van der Kolk's book that says like the body does keep score. And we have opportunity. So where your nervous system, what you're telling me in your day, your nervous system is fight and flight at that. So it's when we're in all sympathetic, and this is great because we can talk about the nervous system because it's where really the magic and gold is at with how we can tune in. If our nervous system is dysregulated, we can't hold an event. So your first responder, you go to an event that if you can't hold, you compartmentalize and it goes somewhere. And then a lot of things get held and pushed and shoved down to the point then where we can't connect to ourselves, let alone anybody else, because that's terrifying. Because if we connect once, then we have to feel something. So this brings us into a functional freeze. I just came across that's you'll start hearing it probably more and more, but that's what the system ends up doing. It functionally freezes. And it's like I'm dealing with this really well because I'm not feeling anything. And like, I'm actually really good at holding stress. And, things don't really faze me actually. And I can like hang on to a lot of stuff. And then you're like, well, but then why don't I remember my 5-year-old's birthday? And why don't I remember actually feeling something when I hugged my husband or partner or whatever, or like, it's because you're not dealing with it. You're shoving shit anywhere else because maybe you're dealing with one thing, but then that also means it bleeds into everything. So you can't actually feel anything else either. So when we chatted about this, and what I find is that like, as people who live in that world, like if I ask you your stress level and you're telling me it's a 3, like I know if a first responder gets to like a 4, like they're feeling stress actually, like because that's at other people's 12. Like if I hear 4 from like a first responder, like, oh man, like you're feeling something because there's so much all the time. Like police, like anyway, so I don't know where I'm going other than like, yeah, like it's a big deal. We don't connect to ourselves in moments. We just do. And then what's the point? Like, that's my question. That's been my question, like with what I've been like exploring just with myself in my life. Like, then what's the point if I can't enjoy my food? If I can't sit and enjoy the sunshine on my face and I'm just waiting for the next thing. And when I keep waiting for the next thing, guess what the next thing is? Death. like if you're not choosing life in moments, you're choosing death effectively. But then it's actually hard to come to that point. And I know this is a lot all at once, but it's hard to get to the point that we're exactly where we're at because we chose to be there. Because then we have to change something if we want something to be different. And that's hard too.
Yeah. Yeah. You, before we started recording, we were kind of just talking about some stuff and I want to bring back. So you had said, you get a patient that comes in and they're like, yeah, my left hip is really bugging me. Like, I might've jammed it. I fell on the ice, something like that, a physical thing, but that you can adjust physically, adjust the physical symptoms, but usually there's something underneath there that may also be leading to that pain in the left hip. And that as humans, we can choose to be in pain or we can choose not to be in pain. And so this is something I dove into this in a yoga webinar and yoga workshop about our choice of pain. And there was actual like physical study of people. I was about yoga and low back pain and people that their back pain, their perception was like on the 1 to 10 scale. So their perception was their back pain was a 10. And then there was like some ability to actually test the pain. And the pain was actually like at a 2. But because they had chosen to feel, or somebody had told them that they had low back pain and that they had a low back injury and that they should protect their low back, even using those words, they had then almost manifested a higher level of pain, but that the actual pain was at a 2. And so we had kind of talked about that. So people choosing to be in pain, choosing not to be in pain, and not that concrete, not that black and white. But can you dive into that a little bit for me?
Yeah. And I'll say like the choice, sometimes we don't recognize it is a choice at the time yet because because this story's been told to us. So we have to recognize that we've been hearing a story first, and then it's a bigger choice. But yeah, but when if a person comes into the clinic with, like you said, left hip pain, and they've had an injury, but the injury is persisting longer than it, I'll say should, but like there's no shoulds, but yeah, there's often a connection to what else are you holding on to. So, and it becomes more of an emotional holding than a physical pain. And I find, like you said, then, it's like, am I actually feeling the pain? And like, what's going on? Like, actually, you have full range of motion here, but I could give the example of probably the first time I recognized how much emotion was held in the body. There was a patient that was in, and low back pain wasn't getting better. And I said, what's going on in your life? Like something's like, this isn't responding how we're used to. And I don't like, this is irresponsible to just keep treating it like this. And he's like, well, a couple months ago, my wife cheated on me and left me. I'm like, literally, Nikki, the next time I saw him 2 days later, his low back pain was 80% better because he acknowledged there was something to it. And so I think that's where it is. There's a lot around it. And if we can help ourselves figure it out, or help somebody figure out what else could possibly be feeding it. Because we have a pattern where when we feel stress, like you just kind of clench, right? Go into that clenching trauma pattern. And that does physically wind an injury. So there's physicality behind it. But what are you why are you clenching? And that's what you kind of get into. And why do you see 10 people on the street? Or if you look at like into radiology, x-rays, MRIs, you can have 10 people with disc bulges and 5 feel it, 5 don't. And they can be exactly the same. And it's, again, what's my story?
Yes. And that was part of it too. It was like, things like that, like an actual medical thing saying that like half the people walking around have knee issues or knee pain or low back pain or hip pain. Half of them feel it, half of them don't. And so what is that? Is it the story we've told ourselves? Is it that we've, had a prior injury that we didn't deal with? And I say that in quotation marks, in that, maybe we just pushed it off and we didn't actually go to physio and do physical things that we could do to build that up. But now in our mind, it's like, oh, that's always my bad knee. That's my bad ankle. That's my bad hip. And I've been trying really hard in my yoga class, because I do teach mostly to older adults, to say like, stop telling yourself that narrative. Stop saying it's my bad side, my bad ankle, my bad knee, my bad hip, because then it just reinforces it's bad, that there's something wrong with it, that it's, broken, it's wrecked. If you just think about it as it's the other side, it's just, that's my left side and this is my right side. And on my left side, I don't have that ability. I don't have that mobility. I don't have that range of motion. All right, well, that's just on my left side. I just don't have that range of motion anymore. On my right side, I do. So it's just different. It's not bad that we don't have that range of motion. It's just different. And so then we can modify as we need to. We can adjust the poses. We can adjust our, how we get in and out of our car. We can adjust how we go up and down stairs. We don't have to put a negative connotation around that, whatever thing it is in our bodies. So yeah, I really like that. I want to go back because we did have such a great conversation about it, about our degree of stress, first responders' degree of stress and normal people, because when we talked about this, it really struck me, and I kind of walked away from our conversation going like, holy fuck, that is totally right. Like, how have we never talked about this as first responders? And we have kind of, like, as first responders, we talk about like, oh, like people don't even know what fucking stress is. I actually said it yesterday. Oh my God. Now that I think about it, I said it yesterday. Somebody was like, oh, that was a really hectic shift. And I was like, because we had like 4 people come in at the same time and we had to juggle 4 like administrative things at once. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I was like, yeah, that was, but like, I'm trying to be really nice. I'm like, yeah, that was pretty hectic. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, you don't know what the fuck hectic is. Like, right. So like our perception is a little skewed, but our perception on stress, like either traumatic stress or regular stress, is skewed as well, because we do operate at like a 12 almost all, well, I wouldn't say like 12 all the time. We're, yeah, like in normal people's level, we're probably at like an 8 or a 9 all day long, especially when we're at work, because you're just constantly on that alert. You're constantly on high observation, vigilant, hyper vigilant. Sometimes you're always watching, always paying attention, always looking. You're 8 things are going, the radio's going, you're driving a patrol car, you're watching for things, you're observing as you drive, you're in a jail and you're observing 72 people at the same time, and you're trying to watch for little tells as to like who's doing what, are they in the wrong cell, you look sketchy, what are you doing over there? Like, so we're constantly on that. And so when you ask like, oh, what's your stress level? If we've had a normal, and I always say with quotation marks, normal shift where nothing really popped off, and it just was, we went to work, you had a couple calls, but you went and dealt with them, and they were like, whatever, like, oh, it was like an argument here, but you were able to resolve it. Nobody fought. You didn't have to physically restrain anybody. Like, it's a pretty easy shift. You're like, that was a fucking easy shift. I'm like a 1. Like, I got 0 stress. But compared to somebody else, if they had to sit through that, they'd be at like an 8 or a 9 and would need to go home and like just sit in stillness and process all the shit that happened. And then when we've had a really bad shift, we come home, we still say like, even when it's been like, even I would say my worst shift ever, come home where like I visibly was shaking and was like, that was fucking scary. Like, I could have not come home tonight. Wow. I'd say I was probably still not at a 10. I don't think I would have gone to a 10. I would have been like, yeah, that was like definitely like an 8 or a 9. Like, wow. Because you always think there's something worse than what you've already dealt with, which maybe there always is. But how does that compute to like normal people, and then how we hold on to that stuff?
It's an interesting question, because everybody's 10 is still their 10.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you have to honor that for everybody. But when I know what that 10 looked like, or what that 8 looked like, and you weren't even willing to go to a 10, what I need to acknowledge is a large necessity to disconnect from your body. So then for me, what the ask is for the person is the nervous system has to be taken into like a parasympathetic state. So when I see that person, it's hard to connect, because like really to bring like a first responder in, and like to sometimes it is to really help them acknowledge what they do on a daily basis, and how much you go through in your nervous system and how stressful it actually is. Because to go there means an acknowledgement of that is just scary.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's actually a 10, then what the fuck am I doing going into 10 out of 10 every day? And I, like what,
Yep.
why do I do that? Like if I acknowledge that, then like what now?
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting because sometimes you just have to be there and just hold that at that moment
Mm-hmm.
and work with it and just take away that left hip pain. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes when it's over and over, I'm getting emotional just because I think of a few patients and it's just like, or they just recognize it's just not enough,
Mm-hmm.
and they come home and they have nothing left for people they love.
Yeah.
Right. And,
yeah.
So to acknowledge it all is a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's starting to unpack that story. So it's a really, I just take a deep breath for them because I just see how it's like it's like a glass house or a house of cards. And if I step too far into one room, this room's gonna fall over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But this house of cards is so important because of what you do on a daily basis. So it's a very real conversations that have to be had because people can't keep sacrificing themselves for this purpose. But then also that adrenaline that you feel, like a 5 would be boring. Right? So then you get addicted to this too. So there's like the other side of it where this is a rush and I have purpose and I have this drive and I get to do this. And then, so like, if I'm sitting, like having a tea, looking out the window, like this, like now what? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really like big, like a relative, like you're pulling out the rug from underneath someone when you just take them from a 10 to, like, you got to meet the nervous system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's at, and then help it calm down and come in. I know this is a different segue into something else and how to help somebody even work with something they might want to, but
It's totally true though. Like you're touching on, like, this is, guys, like I'm saying, like, she's never been a first responder and yet she knows our lives inside and out. Isn't it fucking trippy? Like, if you're listening to this, you're like, holy fuck, yes. I'm nodding like a crazy person. Like I look like a fucking bobblehead because I'm just like, yes, yes, yes. Oh my God, correct, correct, correct. But it's totally true because if we acknowledge it, which we never do, because if we acknowledge it, like you said, exactly like you said, what the fuck am I doing? What the fuck am I doing going into this every single day if I'm hitting a 10 every single day, right? Why am I doing that? Absolutely. If I acknowledge it, that means that now I'm acknowledging that there is a response and we're trained not to have a response. We are literally trained to fucking not respond like a normal human being when faced with like a split-second decision, traumatic incidents, dangerous situations. Like that's drilled into you at the academy, at recruit training, is to fucking not freeze and not flee and fucking instantly go to fight mode or go to deal with mode, right? And so to then acknowledge, like, oh, that actually did scare me, is terrifying to us, because if we acknowledge that, and we have to acknowledge all the other things that also scare us. And if we acknowledge that, is that then going to cause us the next time freeze or to want to fucking run away because now we've acknowledged that that was scary as shit and like, oh God. So we don't. You're totally right. We do not acknowledge that stuff. We fucking, nope. That was not scary. It was totally great. Totally fine, guys. I'm totally fine. Wow, what a fucking crazy call. Ha ha ha, laugh it off, dark humor. Ha ha ha. Meanwhile, I'm like, oh my fucking God, my body's like, huh, right? So absolutely that. But then again, that whole other side of, we've now, some of us have acknowledged it. Our bodies are starting to process that stuff. And okay, now we're hypersensitive to certain things. And, we come through the door and we are trying to process everything that we've done. And we don't have anything left for the families that we come home to. We don't have anything left for the people that love us because now we've actually tried to process some of this stuff and we're just everything in us, right? So yeah, I do want to kind of dive down into that, what you were talking about how do we now help? Like, how do we deal with that without dropping the whole house of cards?
Yeah. How to bridge that gap.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would offer that you actually have to just burn that house of cards, actually, because they're never stable. So when you're coming and when you're trying to build anything on something unstable, you're never going to have it like on an unstable foundation. It's never going to last.
Mhm.
So we have to acknowledge, like in like you could go to Jungian psychology, anything, but you have to acknowledge the fear, like acknowledge it and know it's real. So it will take a little bit of
Mhm.
time to get to a place. But when, like, I think it was the podcast you sent me with, her name was Natty.
Mhm.
So it was really brilliant. Actually, what she brought in was, after everything that feels like a huge deal or a little deal, do that exercise that she did. Like, bring your body back into itself and acknowledge that it's still safe in there.
Mhm.
And because if you're your own protector, nothing can ever be wrong or scary if you're there
Mhm.
for yourself. So you can just bring your nervous system back in at any moment. So if you do that all the time, then you won't have to do any more back work. But
Mhm.
initially, there's going to be maybe a really like a pendulum swing to the really sensitive, like, because it came in, so it's got to go out.
Mhm.
It won't take as long and it can be scary, but if you're in a safe place and somebody's helping hold you, that's when it feels like it does going in, but it doesn't last as long. And like you could have a minute of crying on the floor instead of like, and acknowledging I'm scared or I'm vulnerable or I'm just acknowledging that and feeling with it. It's hard to sit with, but it's a minute. It's not 10 years.
Mhm.
Right. Or like, so you hold that in you. And then when you know you can hold that fear and hold bad stuff, then it's actually not a big deal to acknowledge that you were afraid. But at that moment, it's critical that you're not. Like
Mhm.
the training, that's brilliant. Like you got to not be at that
Mhm.
moment. But like
Mhm.
10 seconds after, you can say, I was like, to process it immediately, then it leaves quickly. And that's starting to bridge the gap. But I think initially, even what's important is like, it's like, when you tell somebody to calm down when they're like that whole thing, that's the worst thing you can do. Tell somebody to calm down when they're like, when I'm
Yeah.
telling, like, so you meet your nervous system where it's at. So maybe after work, it's a run. It's not a meditation,
Mhm. Yeah.
like you meet your nervous system and then you help drop it down so you can meet it with something calmer. But you
Mhm.
have to ease yourself in and because this is hard for first responders, is gentleness to themselves and kindness to themselves. That also becomes a story that they can't be.
Mhm. Totally. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, and even like when you touched on like sitting with a cup of tea, like if we are not operating at like, we're bored and we're like, oh, this is fucking boring. This is lame. This is fucking like, oh, when we had a quiet shift, we're like, oh, it was so fucking boring. Meanwhile, everyone else in the world is like, I had such a nice shift today. Like nothing happened. And I'm like, oh, it was so fucking boring. I worked today. Like nothing happened. But then when shit happens, I'm like, oh my God, that was the worst shift ever. I was so fucking busy. And it was like, all this shit popped off. Blah, blah, blah. Why am I not enjoying the quiet shifts? Well, because I'm operating at that fucking level. And so I agree. I think that's totally true. Like meeting ourselves where we need to be and then acknowledging that we can enjoy the quiet times. We can enjoy the stillness. We can enjoy not having the craziness all of the time because you then, like exactly you said, you start to crave it. So then you look for that shit in your external life, right? Like now you're a skydiver, now you're a bungee jumper, now you're a da da da. You're doing all these extreme sports. Everything is extreme, extreme. Like I'm going to run the ultra marathon. I'm going to do the because we're always going for the hardest option all of the time, majority of us. For me, that was huge. Again, when I started doing yoga regularly, I'd been in corrections for 3 years, 2 years. No, longer than that, 5 years, because I just got my supers. And so I started going and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this yoga thing out and we'll see. And I fucking did not like it because you have to lay there still and you have to breathe and you have to be calm. And I was like, this is fucking awful. I hate this. But my body was like, but don't you feel better after stretching? And I was like, okay, well, I can acknowledge that physically the stretch felt wonderful. It did need the stretch. Like, okay. And then I started going like actually regularly, like twice a week once I was on mat leave with my second daughter. And it was at that point, even then, like regularly twice a week, it probably took me 4 to 5 months of going twice a week before it finally clicked in Shavasana. So for our listeners that aren't yogis, Shavasana is like the lying on the floor, like you're dead, corpse pose at the end and beginning of class, which I could not do. I would be the person, the dickhead, now that I call them dickheads as a teacher, that like gets up in the middle of it and rolls their mat up and like ninja rolls out the door to try and be quiet for other people. Cause I was like, I can't fucking lay on the floor and be still. Like, I will not be doing that. And then finally one day it clicked and I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I needed, was to lie here and soak everything in and absorb all of the things that I just did in the class, the physical things, but also just lie here in presence and breathe and actually feel my breath going into my body and feel my breath going out of my body. And yes, does your mind automatically still and you become this Zen Buddhist fucking monk that can sit in lotus? And no, you don't fucking become that. I'm still not that, guys. I've been doing yoga regularly, teaching 10 plus years. I still sit in Shavasana sometimes and I'm like, okay, what do I need to do after class today? I need to do this. And then I'm like, no, come back, Vicky, come back. Right. But that click came and it was like, oh my God, I did need that stillness. I did need that time. I did need that peace. I did need that calm. And once I started doing that and accepting that, the calm then filters out to other parts of your life. Like you don't have as big of a reaction to stupid shit. I mean, I'm not going to say again, and I've said this multiple times in podcasts, I'm not going to say that I started doing yoga and immediately became this really calm person that didn't still fly off the fucking handle, freak out at shitty drivers, yell at people, lose my cool multiple times a day. I did. But I definitely also found the other side of it where I was like, really, do I really need to react to this? Am I really going to put energy into react? Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, you want to be like that? All right, be a dickhead. I will just go along your way, sir. I am not going to let that affect my calm. And so I think that's totally it. Like, I mean, and it might not be meditation. It might not be yoga. It might be fucking running. It might be that you hit that runner's high, you go for your run, you find that calm, that still, that peace in your mind. Your body's still doing something. Yoga, your body's still doing something, but your mind has found that calm and that still. So yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And ultimately, I think what the messaging is to your system is that you've chosen yourself at that moment. So it doesn't have to be anything other than a choosing of yourself for the right reason. So if you're going for a run to run off the pizza you had, not the best deal. If you're going for a run because your body and mind are craving that, great. If you're doing yoga, like it's the intention behind it too. Mm-hmm. And stillness is terrifying for people who aren't used to being still. Because what if my brain tells me something I don't want to hear? Right?
Totally.
Because that's terrifying too. Because if I hear it, you can't unknow shit.
Mm-hmm.
So then we end up resisting our gut feelings, and resistance into who we are. That also builds sickness and disease. So it's really like figuring out, and it's holding compassion for yourself wherever you're at, never shooting yourself, but doing something that feels good and giving your brain and body that message that I'm doing this for me for a minute or half an hour. If it's 30 seconds, that's all you can handle. That's cool, but do it for you. And then that's that again. And we chatted a little bit about self-abandonment too, but bringing in, not abandoning yourself in a moment for even 30 seconds a day can bleed into a lot of different facets of life. And then you spoke to, it doesn't you're not snapping as much and you're not doing that, but you're also, I feel like that happens when we become less of a victim.
Okay. Dive into that for me.
So and you mentioned the word acceptance is that's the thing. If we can accept where we're at any given moment, at any given time, nothing actually has to be different. Mm-hmm. When we think something has to be different, that's when we fight. I think you shouldn't have cut me off driving, so fuck you. And I'm getting mad. So that's my problem, actually, that I'm getting mad because I made myself a victim. Mm-hmm. But this also blends into that Cartman's triangle of rescue, victim, persecutor. So
I don't know this.
okay,
Tell me about this.
It's all like when I explored this, like my mind was blown because I like to think like rescuers rescue, victims victim, and they're not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the rescuer and victim are very, and they're in the persecutor. There's this triangle of it. So we rescue so we don't become a victim. But if somebody doesn't do something that lines up with how we think it should be done, then we're actually the victim rescuing people.
Oh my God.
Do you know what I'm saying there?
Yes, I totally know what you're saying there.
So it's kind of this nice, like, smoke and mirrors sideshow when we think we're rescuing. And I'm not talking about, I'm like general rescuing in life, like being a rescuer. So we're rescuing all these people, but we're actually the victim. Because if something doesn't go how we need it to go, then we're like quickly victimizing ourselves.
This is literally, okay, we talked again before we started recording, we talked about this, about like how I have way too much shit and I always say yes to things. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I can do it. And my big thing is usually I say yes because I'm like, I know that I can do a good job and I know I can probably do it better than whoever else they were going to ask. Or I know who they've asked and I'm like, oh, I fucking definitely can do it better than them. And I am not letting them wreck. I'm not letting them wreck whatever the fuck I worked for, or, you know, like coaching is a big thing. I'm not letting them wreck my program. So yes, I will volunteer to coach way more than I fucking need to because they will not do it the way I want it done. And so if they will not do it the way I want it done, then I guess I better do it. But then I look at my calendar and I'm like, you stupid motherfucker, you do not have enough fucking hours in your life to do that. Like, what is wrong with you? Let it go, Nikki. Let it go. Let somebody else do it. And if they don't do it as good as you, does it really fucking matter? And logically, I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. The children are still being coached. The program is still running. And the other larger part of my brain is like, yes, it fucking matters. It absolutely matters. It matters. They need the best coaching possible. I want them to be successful. I want them to continue on. I want them to like love the sport. I want them to do the things. So it has to be me that does it. And 100% then I become a victim because then I'm like, you are an idiot and you have way too many things. And now you're stressed and now you're freaking out because you're driving all over the place and you have no time to yourself. You have no time to eat or think or do anything. And I did it to my fucking self. Yeah. So yeah. Hi, it's me. It's me over here.
And when in that though, when we get into like dark sides of that, like when in that, don't you just at times just then want somebody to fucking rescue you?
Yes.
Like, right. Then all you want to do is be rescued because like you haven't rescued yourself and you've continually abandoned, right? Like, so this can go deep, but so yeah, then we have this big void that can't be filled and we just want somebody to swoop in, take away all this shit. But then you're like, when you sit with, you're like, I totally did this to myself.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. 100%. And then how do you come to terms with that? And
100%. Moms, I will say, we do this all the time. So for our female listeners, we do this all the time. We 100% take on all the things. And sometimes we have no choice. Like, again, if you're usually, again, single moms, things like that, you have to do all the things. There is no other human there for you. But a lot of the times as moms, if you do have a partner, we still take on all the shit. And we don't have to. You can fucking tell your partner to do the field trip forms. You can tell your partner to do the fucking pickup. You can tell your partner to make supper or clean up after. Like again, we get mad because we have to tell that person that's a whole nother fucking thing. But like, we take it on ourselves and then we hit that burnout point and we think to ourselves, if you ask any mom, I remember talking about this with my sister when our kids were like 3, 4, and our husbands were like, what do you want for Mother's Day? And we were like, we want to go away to a hotel and not fucking have anybody there. We'll stay in the same room. We're fine with staying in the same room. We want our own bed. I want room service on Friday night. Bring me food to my room. I don't want to get out of my bed. I want to eat. I want to watch stupid, shitty television. Then I want to sleep as much as I can fucking sleep on the Saturday, doing nothing, watching more TV, eating whatever the fuck I want. Skip me the food. Maybe I'll get up and go to the hot tub or the pool if the hotel has that, maybe. And then I'm going to go back to the bed. I'm going to lay. I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to eat and fucking relax. And then on Sunday, I'm going to sleep in again. And then I'm going to come home. That's what we want for Mother's Day. And both of our husbands looked at us and they're like, really? And we were like, yeah, because that is a rescue from all of the responsibilities that we were in charge of at the time. And like, did we ever get it? No. Our husbands were like, oh, here's some flowers. And I was like, I love you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for those. That's totally exactly it. We wanted to be rescued from the shit. How many times has a mom said, I just wish that I got like an illness where I had to like be in a hospital, but just for like a little bit. Like I don't want a serious illness. I just want to be like maybe like a week. Like a week. I'll just go to the hospital for a week and somebody can make food and bring it to me and I will not be responsible for things for a week. Like I would love that. Yes.
But careful what you wish for because it does happen.
Exactly.
It will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and there's a choice within a choice all the time. So we like to think that people won't do things for us, but if we don't ask, they won't.
Mm-hmm.
Because also we're scared that if they say no, then where does that leave our relationship?
Yes.
So there's so much depth and there's so much richness in all this, like in all these talks, because it's so layered. And that's why it's scary to go there. However, oftentimes we'll ask, and then like you said, I'm the only one that can do it well, you feel.
Yes.
And so say like if you have a husband, then, and as a male, like I won't generalize, but they like to have things to do for you. They want to do. And if you don't let them, then they won't. And they're not going to like, so like, it's nice for them to be able to do something for you. But if you continually then tell them they're not doing it right, they're not going to want to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're martyring ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And with anybody, that's not just husbands. It's like husbands, anybody does, like people who do this, or I'm not going to ask for help. I don't need. And so this is a thing too. Like all these things are very like, there's so much to touch on because then ultimately what it comes down to, it's always our choice.
Mm-hmm.
And choices within choices, like you said, single parents, whatever, like, but there's these things that we can ultimately do that are very little that can actually be done.
Mm-hmm.
But then but then we get into then who are we without our story? Who am I without that right hip pain? Who am I not doing all this stuff and actually being happy? Can I do that? What does that look like if I actually do have peace? Then what will people think if I'm actually, where's my worth? What am I validating on then?
Mm-hmm.
Because right now I'm validating on busyness and productivity, not my cup of tea in the morning and the birds singing. But what do I want to be validated on?
Yes. Damn, girl. You're dropping like wisdom bombs like they're going out of fucking style. It's true though. Like it's totally true because and as first responders, I did a whole fucking episode on this. Your identity when you leave the career. Who are you? Now you don't have the uniform. Now you don't have the title. Now you don't have the I am this person. I am a correctional officer. I am not a correctional officer. I am Nikki. I am me. I am a mom. I'm a blah, blah, blah. Like there's a bazillion fucking things that I am. That's just one thing that I do or did, right? But when we leave that identity, it's very scary. That's why fucking tons of people don't leave because they think to themselves, what the fuck am I going to do if I don't work here? Right. Like, and sometimes it's like, I don't feel like I don't have any transferable skills or I need the money or like, but a lot of it is the fear of if I leave this and go work in an office, who am I? I'm just another office schmuck. I don't want to be an office schmuck. Like, no, thank you. So yeah, like that's crazy. That's so crazy. So okay, I know we had kind of dove into like a bunch of different things. Was there something that because I know we kind of had said, we're just going to let this go. We're going to let this episode go where it goes and dive into what we dive into. But was there something that you wanted to bring forward to go through or to talk about? Because I want to make sure that we hit that.
I think we've done a good job to just let it kind of play out. I just think it's really important that people know that there's support, like ultimately to tease it apart if you want to, because it's okay if you don't. And if we're not there yet, like, I don't know how long it took me to realize, okay, like this is happening and now we're going to do this. And that was 8 years ago. And but there's people to help hold yourself through it. And I think because it's important to, I think, bring people to know that they have their own agency over it all. But there's a lot of people, like, personally, like how I hope I can be helpful is I know I have tools, and I know people who can help people help you through it, right? Like, because initially, and just help your nervous system initially, then, and you don't have to change much or anything or nothing. Like, but just what if you just want to feel a little bit better and more calm? Like, what do you want? So there's just people out there to help, and you don't have to stop being a first responder. That's the thing too. If you love it, but how do you just keep it bringing joy and not be your identity? Like, I am Nikki, first responding. Right? So I don't know. I think, like, we've touched on so many things, and I think it's just possible that, because we need first responder, like, we need everybody, but we need also everybody to be human in it, and to love themselves in it, and to be whole in their decision to be it, and to be it because they want to be it, not because they think they need to be for somebody else.
Yes.
And when we're working out of that place of ourselves, and that's that foundation, right? When we're working, and every choice we make is from, like, love and ourselves, then we build that strong foundation in life. Then our house of cards is never going to be a house of cards. It's a fucking brick house when that's the foundation. But it's always going to be a house of cards if it's built off of fear and external validation. So what are you doing and why? And there's people out there that can just help you feel good and get there. If you feel great. But if you're being, like, called, or there's a niggle, you'll find somebody, and you'll always find that person that you need to at the right moment. So trust that too.
Yes. I love that. I think the other part of that is acknowledge the physical pain. Like, acknowledge it if you're feeling it. Like, because that's the other thing is like, you wake up and you're like, oh, fuck, I must have slept wrong. Like, my neck is a little tight. And then you go throughout the rest of the day, you're like, fuck, my neck is still tight. Like, why is my neck so tight? And then you go the next day, and 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 the next day. And then you're like, my neck is really fucking tight now. What is happening? And you don't acknowledge it because we're busy and we're fucking going. Acknowledge that your neck is tight. Do what you need to do. Is it stretch? Maybe you need to go to the chiropractor. Maybe you need to get a massage. Maybe you need to take that hour of your time, or 20 minutes, depending on, chiro, massage, whatever, to go and deal with your physical pain. Because if you can release some of the physical pain, you could probably release some of whatever else is floating around in there. And if you can release that, you're going to feel a fuck of a lot better. We don't want to be in pain. I will say, the chiropractor that I go to, because I had to change one recently, and he was like, yeah, so like do the little test, push them back. Yep. And he's like, how much pain are you in? And I was like, oh, like, same thing. Exactly what we talked about. Like, I don't know, like a 2, 3. And he's like, okay, you have, like, however, I don't even know how many ribs we have, but I had like 19 of them out. Like, they were not in the right spot. And he's like, this is like the worst I've seen in a long time. And you're telling me your pain's at a 2? And I was like, well, yeah, like, I mean, it's not like, look, I can turn my head. And he was like, do you know that you're supposed to be able to turn your head, like, so that your nose goes over your shoulder? And I was like, pardon me? And I was like, it totally can. And I turned my head. Not even fucking close, guys. If you're not even close, try it right now. If you are listening to this episode, turn your head. And if your nose does not go over your shoulder, you have impingement in your neck. And let me tell you, mine does not go anywhere fucking close to my shoulder. And he was like, yeah, you're not aligned. There's some issues. And I was like, and he's like, and that doesn't hurt you? And I was like, well, I mean, it's kind of stiff. Like, it doesn't move. Like, I can't really shoulder check very well, but it's not painful today. And he's like, the human body is not supposed to be in pain. Like, are you in pain every day? And I was like, oh yeah, 100%. And he was like, you're not supposed to be. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And he was like, no, like, you're not supposed to. And I was like, at some point of every day, some part of my body is in pain. And he was like, oh, we got a lot of work to do then. Oh, okay.
It's so funny. It's so funny. I get so far sometimes when I'm talking about, like, the emotions and, like, all the other stuff. But yeah, like, thank you for reining me back into, like, the real point of it all, or the real thing. Because this is like so this is like the gold in it. Like, our bodies. So if you want to think about it this way, yeah, we're not supposed to be in pain. Our brains don't feel anything. Like, do you remember those science experiments where they poke the brain?
Mm-hmm.
You don't feel your brain. Like, you don't feel that. Your body is our brain's feedback loop. If we're in pain, there's something wrong and it's trying to tell us something. Like, it's like, do something about this. So you can either go get out of pain or you can ignore me. And that's when we end up in hospitals or with disease or whatever, because you've ignored and we've expressed to the point where we've just ignored. So it's like, if you won't rest, I will take you down, mother. Like, I'll take you down because you won't give me an option. You subconsciously want to be in a hospital for a week. So I'll get you there because you're not stopping. So yeah. So I'd say, like, from like a chiropractor and what I see a lot of, and that's like the in, right? Like, if like you're just in pain, you don't even know what to do with the rest of all this conversation, go see somebody and maybe they'll just either get you out of pain, which is great, which will leave your brain space to do something or not. But it's our body, like, it's that whole word embodiment. Like, we have to embody it all. And if we're scared, if we don't allow that, we can't get anywhere.
Yes.
So yes, thank you for reining me back into my profession in it. But that's like, I just get so excited about all of it because it's all the same thing, right?
Well, it's like you said, you get down the rabbit hole and then you're this direction, because it is all, and bringing it right back to what we talked about at the beginning. It's all interconnected. Our bodies are vessels for holding all of these things, be it pain, be it emotion, be it trauma, be it, and physically, I love how you said that. Yes, because that's exactly right. Our bodies will take us down. They will be like, we have told you multiple times in multiple ways that something is wrong and you refuse to listen. So then we will smack you and we'll take you down. And now you have to listen because now your physical body can no longer do anything. You are in the hospital, or you do have disease, or you are just so in pain that, it'll throw your back out. So that, I know you guys hate that term because it's not actually what happens, but something will happen with your back where now you have to lie down flat and you can't get out of bed for a week. So like it will happen. It will occur. It will. Your body will do it because it needs to reset. It needs that time to heal, and you're not fucking listening. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my God, girl. This one, like I said, I knew we would get into so many different things, and you just had so many, like, again, wisdom bombs, just dropping them. And so for our listeners, again, lots of tips and things that we gave you. But like, the first thing I would say, start listening to our bodies, start acknowledging when things are happening in our bodies, seek out that treatment, be it physical, be it mental, be it emotional, and don't allow it to start to settle into the body. If we can process it as it comes, it's way easier to process it in 10 seconds than it is to try and process 10 years worth of whatever is stuck in our bodies. That's way harder. That's going to cause a way bigger pendulum swing to process 10 years worth of stuff than it is to process the last minute stressful situation you were just in, to take 10 seconds and process that. So that would be my what I would say to take from this. What would be your take, do you think?
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. That is a really good synopsis of it all. It's just, the body loves to be paid attention to, as one of my yoga teachers said. And it loves attention. It doesn't need much, but it loves you to ask it, what do you need? And it'll tell you if you listen. It'll tell you quickly. Yeah. And if you don't listen, that's cool, but at least you have to ask it.
Yeah. Yes.
And we have to start the conversation, because if we haven't listened for a long time, we have to get to learn each other again, in a sense, but we're all the same thing. So yeah. And what you said was great. I thought that wrapped it up really nicely.
That's awesome. Well, it has been a treat, girl. Like, again, the energy you have, like what you bring to your profession, I think is just so amazing. Like, I know that, like, I'm coming to see you because A, I need a new chiropractor, and B, there's people that do work in professions because it's the work. They're good at the work. So they're good at manually adjusting people. They're good at, massage. They're good at being a firefighter. They're good at being a police officer. And then there's people that pour compassion, empathy, and a greater understanding into what they do. And I feel like that's you. You pour more into this, and you're curious, and you want to learn more, and you want to explore more beyond what the work is of adjusting people physically and making sure physically they're out of pain. So thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for diving into that. Thank you for processing through your own journey to be curious and try and see what you could learn from this and what you could do and what you could change within your own life. I think that's super inspirational because a lot of us don't. We just kind of go along and well, it is what it is. And you chose not to do that. So thank you for that. Any last words for our listeners?
No, thank you for your kind words, Nikki. And yeah, I'm just grateful for anybody who hung on till now.
And I'll throw Jolene's information in the show notes. If you're looking for a new chiropractor, I'm going, guys. And I can't wait because A, my neck's fucked, and B, I got some shit going on. So yeah, I can't wait to come see you and be adjusted. So it'll be in the show notes, guys. You'll know where she's working. We'll put in some info and you guys can check it out there. But awesome. All right. Well, you have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you too, Nikki.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in, listening, giving me your time, your energy, and your attention. I completely appreciate it. Make sure you check out our next episode with another badass female first responder anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook at bluelinefitnesstesting.com. I hope you stay safe, keep your head on a swivel, and watch your six.